Hi everyone, today is just a short introduction to conditional statements. Why do we need conditional statements? Because of course sometimes or many times you will get to parts of your code where you have a specific condition and then you will have to choose which code to execute and which not. For example, let's say we have, for example, a program, or we have to write a small program for students where they can input their semester number or the current semester, and the program outputs the year, their students' year, the year which they're in currently. So let's say we have an integer value current semester. Let's say the current semester of this student is 2, and now we want to print like a welcome message like hi. Then we want to print something like if the current semester is 2, we want to print you are in the first year, and then we want to print out a message which says bye to the user, of course. What else? Yeah, so how can we achieve this? So now if we just have this variable and do nothing, of course this code gets executed every time and doesn't respect the value of the student. So for this purpose we can use the if statement. With this we can check a condition. For example, if the condition you put inside these braces. So if the condition, for example, the current semester is lower or equal than 2, then we want to output you are in the first year. So let's run this, and of course, because the current semester is 2, and here we check if the current semester is lower or equal to 2, so this condition is true. This code gets executed. The whole code which is inside this curly braces of the if statement gets executed. In our case, it's just this system out print line method call, and this gets executed, and here it gets written to the console. Of course, we can also say then, okay, if this condition is true, so if this is correct or is equals to true, then do this. But if this doesn't, if this is not true, if this is false, so for example, if the current semester is 3, then you should output you are not in the first year otherwise. So if we run this, Ctrl+Shift+F10, then let's compile it and run it. Now it says hi, and now the condition here gets executed. This returns to false, and because of this line does not get executed. So here's no you are in the first year, here's a you are not in the first year. So if this is false, this else statement, the code which is inside the curly braces of the else statement, gets executed. You are not in the first year. Of course, you can also do something like that, like let's say now we want to output if the current semester is lower or equals than 2, output you in the first year, and if the current semester is lower or equals than 4, then output year in the second year. So now we can also nest if statements, of course. So let's take a if statement here. If the current semester is lower or equal than 4, then output you are in the second year. And of course, now if you run it, what happens? Yeah, of course. What else? Okay, let's change it. Let's change this here. So now, if we run this, of course, the current semester is 3. It outputs high. Then this conditional gets executed. Of course, it is false, so nothing inside here gets executed. Before I had this here above, and because of this, that would not get executed. Now, of course, this is false, and this code block here gets executed. Everything which is inside the curly braces of the else statement. So now we are here, and here we say if current semester equals is lower than or equals 4. So 3 is lower than or equals 4, for example. So it will output you're not in the you're in the second year, and then you're not in the first year, for example. Of course, there are also other operators. For example, you can also say if the current semester is lower than 2, so then this condition would be true if the value the current semester is lower than 2. So if it is 2, it is false, because it is not lower or equals than 2, it is just lower than 2. So for 2 it would be false, for 1 it would be true, for 0 it would be true, for -1 it would be true, -2, 3, 4, 5. You think you get it. So for every value which is lower than 2, except 2, 2 except 2, of course, then you of course have the greater 2, they're the same. For every value which is greater than 2, the condition is true. For 2 it is false, for 3 it is true, for 4 it is true, 5 it is true, 6 is true, 6,000 also true. So for everything greater than 2 it is true, and for everything greater than or equals than 2 this condition is also true. So now it includes the 2, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. Then of course, if you want to match an exact value, so let's say if the current semester is exactly 2, you have to use equal sign. So equals 2, then you can say this should be true, so this code should be executed only if the current semester value is exactly 2. So only for 2 this is true. And if we have not equals 2, then for every other value except 2 the condition is true. For 2 it is false, for 3 it is true, for 1 true, for 2 0 true. For every other value the condition is true except for 2. Okay. So yeah, but this, yeah, so okay, yeah, this was for example, the if statement. So you have a condition, and if the condition is true, then this code gets executed inside the curly braces directly after the if statement, and then you can also add an else statement. You don't have to add an else statement, but you can add an else statement, and then you can specify in this curly braces the code which gets executed when this statement is false. And here is the same. This is an if statement without an else statement. So if this statement is true, this condition is true, this code block in here gets executed. If it is false, then nothing gets executed here from this block. Of course, this code executes anyway, regardless of the condition of this if block here, because after an if statement, after this if statement, and after this complete if statement, the code gets executed anyway, if there's no other if statements or something which prevents the code from execution. So, but those if statements, or those nested if statements, you see, we just have one if statement and then we nested another if statement, and the code again is this is really simple things we are using. We're just using a variable, a system out, print line, and if statements, and you see, so not so much code, but it's already hard to read, because, or maybe not for us now, because we wrote the code currently and thought a little bit, but it's hard to read for anyone who sees the code for the first time, because you have a if and then else and then again an if, and you have to think a little bit, okay, this is this, and a little bit more, or it is enter this long print system out print lines, and you have to think a little bit more. So this makes code a little bit hard to read if you nest many if statements. So this is just one level of nested if statements, but you can also continue something like that, then else, okay, no, then 6, and you see is another level of if statements, and now it is much harder to understand and read the code. So be aware that if you nest if statements, this often results in loss of readability, or can result in loss of readability. So maybe think twice before nesting if statements. If there isn't a possible other solution, for example, we can also get, let's cut out this, let's get rid of everything here. And of course you can also do something like that, like okay, let's here after this first if statement, you can of course use an else statement, but there's also another statement for the if family. So there's also the else if statement, for example. So you can also write else if, and then here you can specify another condition. For example, okay, let's say current semester lower than equals 4, then let's output you are in the second year, and then we can say, and otherwise we can say else you are not in the second year, so in the first or second year. And let's separate those. Let's run it with 3, for example. Let's run this. What do we have now? So now the current semester is 3. We have our high. You have this statement is false because current semester is not lower than or equals 2. It's greater than 2. So this year in the first year doesn't get executed. That's correct. Then we have else if current semester is lower than or equals 4. So this statement is true. This is true. 3 is lower or equals to 4. So we print you are in the second year. So since this is true, else this does not get executed or did not get executed, and we only have the by here because after this after the whole if statement, of course, the code gets executed. So you can use those else if statements instead of maybe the nested ifs. So one option would be to have else if statements, for example, instead of nesting ifs. So we can also say lower than equals 6, you're in the third, of course, and then we have something like maybe that 8, you're in the 4th year, for example. Now let's say we are in the 7th semester. So now it says hi 7 is greater than 2, so false. Also, or let's say 7 is not lower or equals than 2. So this condition is false. This doesn't get executed. It's also not lower or equals than 4. Doesn't get executed. Not lower or equals than 6. Also doesn't get executed, but it is lower or equal than 8. So this code gets executed. This one is true. So else does not get executed, and there's you in the 4th year. So okay, so that's a little bit more readable, maybe. Then nested ifs, of course, more readable than nested ifs. So this is an option, for example, to get rid of nested ifs. In this case, for example, other cases there are other options, of course. But here you also have to be aware of the ordering of the if and else if statements. What do I mean with that? So in this case, for example, yes, if we say the current semester is 3, so Ctrl+Shift F10, you can run your code. So now we just changed the current semester to 3, so it says you're in the second year. So this one is false and this one is true. Yeah, so it outputs you're in the second year. Since this is true, the others won't get executed. Okay, let's say at first we thought about check if so maybe we had a small typo, or we just were thinking a little bit different than before and writing code like that, for example. So if the current semester equals is lower than or equal to this, if the current semester lower equals than 8, then you're in the 4th year, of course. That's true. Maybe. And if it's lower equal than 4, then you're in the second year and so on. So we sorry, we just changed the order. We just took the last if statement and put it on the second place after the if, the last else if statement, and put it after the if. And now if we run this, of course, we check this statement here. That's false. Then we come to this statement afterwards, and 3, of course, 3 is lower or equal than 8. So we print you are in the 4th year. But yeah, so that condition is true, and because of this, this line gets executed, or this block gets executed here, and the others get ignored, of course, because this is the first condition which is true. And the first condition which is true gets executed, and the others are ignored. Okay, so but we don't want this to happen, so we have to further specify it somehow. So let's see, there is one thing called logical operators, for example. So there we can say, for example, okay, if the current semester, so okay, let me maybe try it one more time. Okay, we can say, for example, okay, we have to further specify it. So what is, for example, if the user inputs user should not be able to input this, but let's say the user inputs 0, for example. So if you're in the current semester is 0, it says you're in the first year. Of course, if it the user inputs -1, we are also in the first year, because this condition is every time the first condition which is true in this if block we created here. So we can further specify it with logical operators. So we can say, if the current semester is greater than 0. Greater than 0 means it's true for every value which is greater than 0. For 0 it is false, for 1 it is true, because 1 is greater than 0, 2 is true, 3 is true, and so on. So we want to specify it if the current semester is greater than 0, and we can use this double AND operator. So this is the logical AND operator for it's called a logical AND. And with this operator we can say, if this condition here on the left side is true, and the condition on the right side is true, then and only then execute, then and only then is the whole condition here is true, and then execute the the block of the if, because the whole condition is true. So short again, if this is true and this is true, then everything is true. So if it's greater than 0 and lower than 2, then we are in the first year, of course. So for let's take 2 again, and for 2, of course, we saw it, we will get you're in the first year. For every other value, of course, if we input 0, then we won't get you're in the first year anymore, because this condition is false. And then if one condition of those two is false, the whole condition is false, so this won't get executed. And on the next statement is the else statement, but here we don't exclude any other values, so 0 is lower than or equals than 8, so this is true anyways, and so this code gets line gets executed here and the others gets ignored because this one is true and this is the first true else if statement. So now we can further specify this. So when are we in the fourth year? The student is only in the fourth year is if his or her current semester is greater, you can continue with this, greater than 6, and the current semester lower than or equals than 8. So now if we execute this, of course we excluded the value here, this value 0 here, so this condition is false. So if one condition is false of those two, the whole condition is false. So here in the else if this condition is false because 0 is lower than 6, and this condition is true. But if one condition is false and this one is false, then the whole condition is false, so we don't execute this code. So now we execute this code because 0 is lower than or equals to 4. Now we can say again, okay, when is the student in the second year? Only if she or he is her or his semester, current semester is greater than 2 and current semester lower than or equals than 4. So if the semester is greater than 2 and current semester lower or equals than 4. So now if we execute this, again the first condition is false, so the whole condition is false. Here the first condition is false, so the whole condition is false. The first condition here is also false because 0 is lower than 2. So this is false. So the whole condition, or both conditions are, or the whole condition here is false since one of those two is false. And here again 0 is lower than 6. Lower or equals than 6, so this is true, so this code gets executed. And again, let's further specify this, current semester greater than 3, 4, and then current semester lower than or equals than 6. So now you're not in the first, second, third, or fourth year. Ctrl+Shift F10 to run the program, and now again 0. This first condition is false, so both false, both false, both false, both false. Not both false, but the first condition is false. The second condition, of course, we saw is true. And since we use the AND, the code block again only gets executed if both conditions are true, but the first one is false. So if one is false, the whole condition here is false. So false, 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 and then we just have the else without an if. So this gets executed if everything above is false. So okay. Now we got to know logical operators. Of course, you can also do something like so. Of course, this isn't the only logical operators. There are also others, but this one you would of course there are others. You can also, if you want to know more, of course you can also read a little bit, use Java logical operators and on W3 schools. Of course you again have some operators like the arithmetic operators, what those do, the plus to add something, subtract something with the minus sign, multiply something. You have all know the assign operator to assign values. There are also other operators, plus assign to here, for example, to add 3 to the current value, subtract 3 from the current value, and so on. And here you, of course, for example, you have the logical AND operator and, for example, the logical OR. So we already said this, that the logical AND operator with these 2 AND signs here returns true if both statements are true. Like we use this here. So this is the whole thing is only true if both of those statements are true. And here you have the OR operator. For example, this returns true if one of the statements is true. So if you use this OR operator, then not both statements has to be true. It's enough that only one statement is true, and it does not have to be this or this statement. So the whole statement is true if either this statement is true or this statement is true. So not both at the same time has to be true, only one of them. There, of course, you can also do something like that, like let's show it here. Int h is I don't know, 43 for example, and you can say I don't know, I do just now some random example, maybe if h greater or greater 40, let's print you are older than 40, of course, and age lower 50. I'm just thinking about what to how to show this, but let's try to construct something. You're older than 40, or you're older than 40 and younger than 50. Yeah, I don't know, maybe, yeah, it's hard to construct a meaningful example somehow, but let's what I wanted to show you is, let's get rid of this first, maybe, or just copy it. We already did this before. We used the logical AND operator and said if the age is greater than 40 and if the age is lower than 50, then execute everything inside here. We did this before, so if we run this, of course we will get this output message: you're older than 40 and younger than 50. But you can also do something like if you can also take a condition, for example, And now we say if this is true, to this. But you can also do something like, if this is false, then do this. So, or maybe let's try it like so you are not older than 40 and not younger. Your age is not between 40 and 50. Like your age is between 40 and 50. So now if you execute this, of course, we just change the text. Now we also have an else statement here, and now if we say 43, then of course this line gets executed because this condition and this condition both are true. But if we say 34, for example, now the else statement, of course, like we said before, gets executed. So your age is not between 40 and 50. But you can do also something like this. You can negate this thing. So now it is, if this is true, do this. If this is false, do this. This doesn't change. But now it is true with this value. Now it is false with this value here, of course. 3 makes it 34. The value of 34 makes this condition false. And because of this, the else statement gets executed again. But now you can do something like this. You can take the condition, put it in braces, and use the exclamation mark before, and say, and negate this value. So if this is false, now it is false, you use this operator here. Here we have it, the logical not. Reverse the result, returns false if the result is true. So here we can negate, we can use the logical not operator to make this value true if the value is false, for example. So now what happens, of course, this gets reversed. So now, with this value, the condition is false, and since we use this operator, we make it true. And now it says your age is between 40 and 50, which is complete wrong, of course. But yeah, this was just to show you the logical not operator. So this takes the value of the condition and reverses it. So if this is, the value here is true, then the value of this would be false. And this is the whole complete condition of the if statement. I hope I didn't overcomplicate this for you now with this explanation. But it's really simple. This operator really just takes the condition here inside his or her braces and reverses it. So if this is true, then the exclamation marks makes it false. And also the other way around. So okay, maybe to just show you case you also the logical OR operator. So if we say 30, if the age equals 34 and 35, for example, your age is and age equals, so if the age equals 34 like here and also 35, then your age is either 34 or 35, or no, your age is 34 and 35. So since this isn't possible anyway, that your age is 34 and 35, or of course, I heard it, where was it, in Vietnam, that they count their ages a little bit different. So I don't know if this is true or not, but someone told me that they count the age a little bit different, with 1 year different to the European counting convention. Can I say this? I don't know. So she or he would be in Vietnam, for example, 34, and the European age would be 35. So okay, for this special case, maybe it's possible, or it's correct. But let's say a person can't be 34 and 35 at the same time. Maybe at a single, no, let's say this is not possible. Let's just say it is not possible, okay? So a person can't be 34, 35 at the same time. Anyway, we are at the logical operators. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I want to show you. So if we run this, of course, we will get no output. Why? Because this statement is true. The age is 34, so this is true, but this is false. So the age is 34, but not 34 and 35 at the same time. But we can say, so this is true, this is false. So since we use the AND operator here, both has to be true, that everything is true, but apparently one is false, so the whole condition is false. So we can use the logical OR operator, for example. Now, how to read it with the logical OR? So we can say if the age is 34 or the age is 35, we can print your age is either 35, 34 or 35. So now if we run this, you see, get an output, it's either 34 or 35. So this whole condition gets true if one condition, either on the left or on the right side, is true. So if this is true and this is true, so if this is true, and of course in our case it is true, the whole condition is true. And if this is false, like this, for example, if we put it the other way around, so this is false in this example, but this condition here again is true, so the whole condition is true, since one of the two conditions we used here is true. Of course you can do also something like that. You can also we showed it with the logical NOT operator, that you can use braces to put conditions inside and then operator in front to make this one condition and turn the value around of this condition. Again, you also can use those braces to do something like that. Like, let's say we want to say if the age is 35 or the age is 34 and age is 36, which is not possible again, but you also nest those conditions, for example. So now how can we read it like that? So if the age is 34, or if this condition is true, or this condition is true. And again, we have to look inside this whole condition. This also consists of two conditions, and there we have this condition, age equals 34, and age equals 36. So this condition is only true if those two conditions are true, and this condition is true if either this condition on the left is true or this condition on the right is true. You could also see it maybe like this, like of course here we have two conditions, one on the left, one on the right, and because of this we can skip the parentheses, but you can also see it like something like that. Those things are totally optional, but it would be the same. So here we have one condition, and here we have another condition. But again, you can of course skip this, since these are only ones and they don't change the condition. Yeah. Another thing where let's get back to our if statement. Another thing, instead of if statements, you can use also switch statements. So this starts with switch, and then inside here you give an expression. For example, an expression would be the current semester. So the current semester of course is an integer, and it has integer values. For example, 0 here, or 1 or 2 or whatever. So here with the switch you pass an expression, and then inside with cases you can check something. You can check the value of the current semester. So for example, let's say case 1, then print you are in the first year. Then for example, case 2, of course, there you in the first year. Then you can also specify, let's get rid of this. So you can specify values for cases. So you write case 1, and if the value of the current semester is 1, then print you are in the first year. Then case 2, so if the value of the current semester is 2, print you are in the first year. Then you can continue with that, of course, with case 3, sound you are in the second year. And now if we run this, what happens? Okay, you are in the first year, and you are in the second year gets executed. Why is this? Okay, let's see. So it is 2. Let's see what happens with 1. We have case 1. Oh, you're in the first year, you're in the first year. Okay, that's strange. Okay, now this line gets executed, you're in the first year. So since we have 1, this case gets executed, and this case gets also executed, and this case gets also executed. Okay, let's change it to 3. Now what happens? You are in the second year. Okay, that's correct. So only that got executed. So it seems that if we, for example, specify a value 2, for example, and we have a case 2, then this of course, since current semester the value is 2, this one gets executed, but apparently also this case gets executed. Okay, let's see if we add a fourth case, case 4, out. You are in the 4th year, second of course, because 4th semester, 2nd year, Control Shift F10. Okay, what happens now? Now you're in the 1st year, you're in the 2nd year. Okay, so if we hit one case and this one gets executed, every other case afterwards also gets executed. But we don't want that to be happen, or we only want this thing to output. So what can we do? There's also a keyword. So we have the switch where we specify an expression. Then we have cases for each values which the expression can have. So the integer, since the current semester is an integer, like we said, it can have, in our case, it can have the value 1, the value 2, 3, 4. Of course, it can also have other values, but we only want to switch between those cases here. So case 1 would be you're in the 1st year, and then it should not output the other cases. It just should output this one line here, or those lines we specified in this case here. So since there's nothing like that, there is a keyword. You can declare a case like that, like case, then the value, then double point, and then as many lines of code as you want. So your code here, and then you use the break keyword to say, okay, if we reach this line here after executing this code here in the case, we break, we end the switch statement and execute afterwards. So this break you have to use in all cases where you want to break after to step out of the case after switch of the complete switch statement after executing the code here. So now with those breaks, you can use Control Shift F10 again. Use Control Shift F10 again, and now it says you are with value 2, you are in the 1st year, and then it breaks the switch statement and just executes by. So you can also do some so this switch statement also exists, but there's also another thing. Let's say here we have, for example, 23, and we have no case for 23. So now if we execute this, Control Shift F10, then of course we just have our high and pi, and there is another special case for that. If you want to output something which has no case, you can use the default keyword here and say system out, you are not in any of above years. I don't know. So if you can now execute the code, the program again, we are at the default case because no value here in this case is matches the value which the current semester currently has, 23. So no 23 here. So now the default case gets executed. You are not in any above years. Okay, I think that's it. It was a little bit about conditional statements and operators, logical operators. I hope it made it a little bit clearer, more clear but if there are any doubts or questions, of course, Google is your best friend in those cases. Just Google a little bit about what operators exist. W3 Schools has nice explanations, of course, and the Oracle documentations, they are also very nice when it comes to those things, of course. Yeah. So thank you very much, and I hope you see you next session. Bye.